When I was in 5th grade, I decided to buy a new graphics card for my computer. It wasn't really my computer, it was the family's, but I did well in school, so my parents didn't really care how much I played games on it. I'd saved up a bit of money from birthday and Christmas presents, and finally bought an Nvidia GeForce 6800. However, I made a critical mistake. I got a card with a new PCI Express interface instead of the more common AGP one. Honestly, I didn't know much about computers, including the fact that PCI and PCI Express were two different things, so I was dumbfounded when the GeForce 6800 wouldn't fit into my Asus A7N8X motherboard. I spent most of that evening staring at the mismatched parts, feeling my excitement drain away. I'd spent everything I had on that card, dreaming of smoother graphics and faster load times for my games. After some desperate searching online, I learned the harsh truth: my motherboard only had an AGP slot, and PCIe was a whole different beast. I didn't have the money, or the courage, to ask my parents for a new motherboard. I thought my dream was basically dead at this point. The next day at school, I couldn't help but vent to my friends during recess. "It's useless," I said. "All that money and it won't even fit." That's when Timmy, the weird kid from class, came up to me. Timmy was the kind of kid everyone avoided, quiet, pale, with greasy hair and a habit of muttering to himself. He was obsessed with tech stuff, always scribbling diagrams in his notebook that no one understood. "I overheard you," he said, his voice low. "I've got a PCIe to AGP adapter at home. It's rare, but it'll make your card work. Want it?" I blinked at him, not knowing if this was a joke or not. "Seriously? That's a thing?" Timmy nodded. "My dad got it for me. Come over after school and I'll give it to you." I hesitated. Timmy creeped me out, but the idea of salvaging my graphics card was too tempting. "Okay," I said finally, "I'll come." After school, I followed him to his house. It was in a part of town I'd never been to before, narrow streets lined with old, sagging houses. Timmy's place stood out even among them, a 2-story wreck with peeling paint, a tangled yard, and windows so grimy they barely let light through. The air felt heavy as we approached, like the house itself didn't want visitors. Inside, it got worse. The lights were dim, casting flickering shadows across the walls, and there was a stale, musty smell I couldn't place. Timmy's parents were already waiting in the living room, perched on a sagging couch. They stood up when we walked in, and something was very much off about them. "Timmy, who's this?" his mom chirped, her voice unnaturally bright. "This is Alex," Timmy mumbled. "He's here for the adapter." "Alex," his dad boomed, stepping forward to shake my hand. His grip was cold and lingered too long. "Welcome. We don't get many guests." I forced a smile, then noticed Timmy's older sister, Emily, on the stairs. She was maybe 16 or 17, tall and thin, with long black hair hanging over her face. Unlike her parents, she didn't say anything. Instead, she just stared at me with unblinking eyes. "I'll get the adapter," Timmy said, darting upstairs. I stood there awkwardly as his parents peppered me with questions. "What do your parents do, Alex? Do you live nearby? Do you like games?" It felt like an interrogation, and their smiles never wavered. At some point, Emily slid down the stairs and sat next to me, way too close, still staring at me. "You should stay for dinner," she said suddenly, her voice soft but firm. "We're having something special." No thanks," I stammered. "I just need the adapter." Timmy's mom tilted her head. "Oh, but we insist. It's not every day Timmy brings a friend home." I shifted uncomfortably, desperate for an excuse. "I need to use the bathroom," I blurted, hoping to buy time. "It's down the hall," Timmy's mom said, pointing. I hurried away, but as I passed a cracked open door, I couldn't resist peeking inside. What I saw actually froze me in place, a room packed with computer monitors glowing with live feeds. There were streets and yards, and even the inside of houses, our neighborhood captured in grainy detail. One screen showed a kid riding his bike just a block away. Another looked like someone's living room. My stomach dropped. What kind of family had a setup like this? I backed away, heart pounding, and returned to the living room just as Timmy came down with a small box. "Here's the adapter," he said, avoiding my eyes. I grabbed it. "Thanks, but I've gotta go." "Oh, stay," his mom said, stepping between me and the door. "Test it here. We've got a computer you can use." "No, it's okay. I'll try it at home," I insisted, edging past her. Then Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Don't leave, Alex. We like you." This is when panic started to take over, and I yanked myself free. "I'm sorry. I've gotta go." Then Timmy's mom said something that made my blood run cold. Every guest plays our little game first. It's tradition." After a few seconds, I managed to choke out, "What game?" "A secret," she said, her smile twisting. "Stay and find out." That was it. I bolted for the door, shoving it open and sprinting into the dusk. Behind me, Emily called, "Come back, Alex. We just want to be friends." Her voice echoed, but I didn't stop until I was home, locking the door behind me. Later that night, I examined the adapter. It was a janky, homemade-looking thing with exposed wires, not something I trusted in my PC. I ended up tossing it in a drawer and tried to forget the whole day, but sleep wouldn't come. The sight of those monitors still haunted me. Were they watching me right now? A few days later, Timmy didn't show up at school. Word got around that his family had packed up and left overnight, no explanation. Kids whispered about weird lights and noises from their house before they vanished. I never told anyone what I'd seen in that room, partly because I didn't want to sound crazy. But another part was because I was terrified they'd come after me. I ended up selling the GeForce 6800 to a friend with a PCIe motherboard and bought a cheaper AGP card instead. It worked fine, but every time I booted up a game, I'd think about Timmy's house and those cameras, and what might have happened if I'd stayed for their game. In the end, some upgrades just aren't worth the risk. I built a gaming PC in college, not necessarily because I'm a hardcore gamer, but more because I'd been curious about it, and I had a cousin who was into tech. I worked part-time and had some money saved up, and I kind of needed a new computer anyway, as the old laptop my parents had gotten me in high school was painfully slow. After weeks of scouring forums and watching YouTube tutorials, I settled on a solid mid-range setup for 2010. I ordered an Intel Core i5 760 processor, an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 465 graphics card, 4GB of G-Skill Ripjaws DDR3 RAM, a 1TB Seagate Barracuda hard drive, and a sleek Antec 300 case. For the power supply, I went with an Antec Earthwatt 650W. Nothing fancy, but it had good reviews and fit my budget. When the parts arrived, I couldn't wait to get started. Building it was a mix of excitement and nerves. I'd never done anything like this before, but I followed the guide step by step. The motherboard clicked into place, the CPU cooler snapped on, and the GTX 465 slid into the slot like it was meant to be there. The power supply, though, I messed that up. I installed it upside down, with the fan facing upward instead of down toward the vent in the case. However, I didn't pick up on it at the time, and the cables still seemed to go where they needed. Therefore, when I hit the power button, the system roared to life, and I felt like a tech genius. For about a month, it ran like a dream. I'd play Call of Duty Black Ops with friends, edit videos for a class project, and hammer out essays without that agonizing laptop lag. Then, one night, disaster struck. I was racing to finish a history paper due the next day when the screen went black. A faint burning smell hit my nose, and the PC wouldn't turn back on. I checked the cables, swapped outlets, even prayed a little, but nothing. After some panic Googling on my phone, I figured the PSU had fried. I couldn't order a new one online, shipping would take days, and I needed that paper done. So I decided to hit up a local computer shop I'd seen near campus. It was in a rundown strip mall, sandwiched between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The sign simply said PC repairs in peeling letters, and the windows were so grimy I couldn't see inside. I pushed the door open, and a bell jingled weakly. The air was thick with dust and the stale scent of old electronics. Shelves towered over me, packed with tangled cables, cracked monitors, and ancient tower cases. A single fluorescent bulb flickered overhead, casting jittery shadows. Behind the counter stood a guy, maybe in his 50s, tall and wiry, with sunken eyes and a patchy beard. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he just stared at me with his crooked half-smile. Hi, I said, shifting my weight. I need a power supply, like 650 watts or so. Mine died. He nodded slowly, still smiling. Got just the thing, he rasped, his voice like sandpaper. He shuffled to a shelf and pulled out a dusty box labeled Ultra X3 600 watts. This'll do ya. I hesitated. I'd never heard of Ultra, and the box looked like it had been sitting there since the 90s. You sure it's compatible? I've got an NVIDIA card and works with everything, he cut me off, leaning closer. His breath smelled faintly of metal. Built a lot of machines myself, know what lasts. The guy was definitely creepy, but I was desperate. I glanced around while he bagged it. There were old CRT monitors stacked in a corner, their screens glowing faintly with static, even though they weren't plugged in. A low hum came from somewhere deep in the shop, like a fan spinning too slow. I handed over $40, way less than I'd expected, and got out of there fast. Back in my dorm, I swapped out the dead Antec for the Ultra PSU. It fit fine, and the PC booted up instantly. I finished my paper, submitted it, and crashed into bed, relieved. But unfortunately, that relief didn't last. A few nights later, I woke up to the sound of my computer powering on. The fans whirred, and the GTX 465's green LED bathed my room in a sickly glow. I sat up, confused. I hadn't even touched it. The screen still flickered to life, showing my desktop, but the mouse was moving on its own. Folders opened and closed, like someone was rifling through them. I yanked the power cord out, heart pounding, and it stopped. The next day, I chalked it up to a glitch. I plugged it back in and ran some scans, and found nothing. But then it happened again. This time I was awake, watching a movie on my bed, when the PC turned on and the speakers crackled. A voice, low and garbled, mumbled something I couldn't make out. I froze, staring at the tower. The screen stayed black, but the voice kept going, looping every few seconds. I tore the case open, desperate for answers. The Ultra PSU sat there, its fan spinning lazily. Something caught my eye though, a thin wire that didn't belong. It was snaking from the PSU to the motherboard. I traced it with shaking hands and found a tiny black box taped inside the case, no bigger than a matchbook. It had a blinking red light and what looked like a microphone grill. This is when I knew something wasn't right and panic started to set in. I ripped it out, smashed it with a hammer, and threw the PSU in the trash. Someone, or something, had been listening, maybe even watching. I instantly thought of that shop and that creepy guy, including his weird insistence on this better power supply. The next morning I went back to the strip mall, ready to confront him. But the shop was gone. It wasn't just closed, it was completely gone. The space was just an empty storefront with the for lease sign plastered on the door. The laundromat owner next door swore no computer shop had been there in years. It's just storage, he said, eyeing me like I was nuts. I ended up buying a new Corsair TX 650 from a chain store and rebuilt my rig, triple checking every connection. It's been fine since, but I don't trust it anymore. Late at night, when the dorm's quiet, I swear I hear that garbled voice again, faint and distant, coming from somewhere inside the walls. I have no idea what that guy wanted, or how he vanished. But I've got a deadbolt on my door now, and I haven't built another PC since. 2 years out of college, work was going well, and I moved into my own place, a modest starter home in a good neighborhood. I didn't have much of a social life, but honestly, I wasn't that social to begin with, and I enjoyed the freedom to do whatever I wanted after work. I have to admit I was kind of lonely romantically, and definitely wanted to find someone and start a family, but I figured I had time. Maybe to take the edge off that feeling, I tried out a few new hobbies, including building a desktop computer. I'd landed a solid job as a junior analyst, and with no student loans left to pay off, I had some cash to play with. I'd always been fascinated by tech, but never dove in beyond using my laptop. Building a top-of-the-line gaming PC seemed like the perfect way to learn. I spent weeks researching parts off and on, determined to go all out. This was 2018, and I picked up an Intel Core i7 8700K processor, an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 graphics card, 32GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro DDR4 RAM, a Samsung 970 Pro 512GB NVMe SSD, and an Asus Prime Z370A motherboard. I threw them in a Cooler Master Mastercase H500P case and an EVGA Supernova 750 G3 power supply for good measure. When the packages arrived, I felt like a kid on Christmas morning, except I had no idea what I was doing. I began to set things up in my living room, tools scattered across the coffee table. At the same time, I had YouTube tutorials playing on my phone. The CPU went in well enough, the cooler was tricky but manageable, and the SSD clicked into place easily. Then came the RAM. I'd watched videos saying to line up the notch and push down hard, but I guess I didn't get the gently but firmly part. I grabbed one of the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro sticks, pressed it into the slot, and snap! A sickening crack echoed through the room. I yanked it out and saw the board split clean through. My $300 RAM kit was now half useless. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't finish the build with one stick, and I also didn't want to wait days for a replacement to ship. That's when I remembered a small computer store downtown, Tech Trend Innovations. It wasn't a big chain, just a local spot I'd seen in passing. With a broken RAM in my pocket, hoping they'd maybe take pity on me, I grabbed my jacket and drove over. The store sat in a rundown strip mall, its neon sign flickering weakly. Inside, it was a cluttered mess, shelves overflowing with outdated GPUs, coiled cables, and bins of loose screws. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. A guy at the counter barely glanced up from his phone as I mumbled something about needing RAM and headed deeper in. I was rifling through a stack of memory kits when I heard it, a deep, grinding noise like a hard drive failing, but louder. It came from the back of the store. I paused, listening. The sound shifted into a pulsing rhythm, almost like breathing. Despite a little bit of fear, curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked around a shelf. There, in a dark corner, stood something straight out of a nightmare. It was tall, at least 7 feet, with a body made of twisted metal and wires. Its arms were long and jagged, ending in claw-like circuit boards. Its head, or what passed for one, was a cracked monitor screen, static flickering across it, and 2 glowing green LEDs stared out like eyes. It looked like a computer that had crawled out of a scrap heap and decided to hate the world. I staggered back, my breath catching. It was too late though. The thing noticed me and turned, its screen flashing red, and a distorted voice crackled from somewhere inside it. Defective, discard, replace. It lunged, faster than anything that bulky should move. I tripped over a box of old floppy disks, scrambling down the aisle as it stomped after me. Its claws scraped the shelves, sending parts flying. I ducked behind a display of cooling fans, heart slamming against my ribs. The grinding noise filled the air, drowning out my thoughts. "Stay away," I shouted, grabbing a random power cable and chucking it. It bounced off the monster's chest, useless. Just as it loomed over me, a woman's voice cut through the chaos. "Move!" I dove aside as a figure stepped forward, a beautiful woman with piercing blue eyes and dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She clutched a box, a Team Group T-Force Delta RGB 16GB RAM kit, and hurled it with all her strength. The box smashed into the monster's screen, shattering it. Sparks flew, and the creature let out a warped screech, collapsing into a heap of smoking metal and plastic. I sat there, panting, staring at the wreckage. The woman brushed her hands off and turned to me. "You okay?" Yeah," I managed. "What was that?" She shrugged, a faint smirk on her lips. "That's the owner's pet project. It's some AI-driven repair bot that went rogue. It happens more than you'd think." She picked up another T-Force Delta RGB kit from a nearby shelf and tossed it to me. "This'll work with your Z370A, trust me." I caught it, still dazed. "Thanks. I'm Ethan." "Leela," she said, her eyes softening. "You're lucky I was restocking. That thing doesn't like novices." I laughed weakly. "Guess I owe you one." "Build that PC right, we'll call it even," she replied, heading back to the counter. "Or come by tomorrow. I'll show you how to install that RAM without breaking it." A few days later, my rig was up and running, the T-Force Delta RGB glowing through the case window. Leela kept her promise, stopping by my place to help. She really knew her stuff, way more than my shaky YouTube skills, and we ended up talking for hours about tech, games, and everything else. That visit eventually turned into more. We started hanging out, and then dating. By late 2018, she moved into my starter home, and we were planning our next build together, a dual PC setup for streaming. The loneliness I'd felt faded away, replaced by something much better. Thinking back now, I still wonder about that repair bot at Tech Trend. Leela insists it was just a glitchy prototype, but I've never gone back to check. It doesn't matter though, it brought me to her, and that's worth every second of terror.